I don't have a lot of confidence in Mr. Trump because of the language that comes out of his mouth.
Donald Trump is touring the many natural disaster sites across the country, pretending to be able to give some sort of insight when he can't even handle the natural disaster happening on his face. And while the victims of the floods in Asheville, North Carolina are happy to have some media attention, they weren't so happy to hear Trump say this.
I'll also be signing an executive order to begin the process of fundamentally reforming and overhauling FEMA, or maybe getting rid of FEMA. I think, frankly, FEMA is not good.
Not exactly what the Republicans of North Carolina are wanting to hear, I'm sure. Because while the conspiracy-brained maggots are always going off about FEMA being some sort of government control program, in reality, the people on the ground have a lot of good things to say about FEMA. Before we get into the details, make sure to like the video if you like the video, and double check that you're subscribed. Here's what the people of Asheville are saying about Donald Trump's visit.
I hope people will see it for what it is, that it's, there are people in need, there are people that want to get back to, doing their jobs and putting money back into the community and employing folks from the community, because a lot of businesses in Western North Carolina are independent. FEMA won't assist us as a commercial business, but they've assisted many of our employees and a lot of people that we know.
I'm really happy that President Biden and the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development did some quick work to get a block grant for this area. I don't have a lot of confidence in Mr. Trump because of the language that comes out of his mouth. And I feel like that I know he's here today, and it is my desire and my hope that he will be supportive of us, that he will help the people in California that's burning.
Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. You can see that even the business owners in that area, who tend to be conservative, are aware of the help that President Biden and the Office of Housing and Urban Development did to help the business owners there when they could, and FEMA stepped in to help the employees of those businesses to get them back on their feet. Now, you can say that the response from FEMA should be faster, or that they should play a support role to the locals who know that natural disaster better than anybody else. But what's Trump's answer to a purposefully ineffective government agency? To shut it all down.
I think when you have a problem like this, I think you want to go and, whether it's a Democrat or Republican governor, you want to use your state to fix it and not waste time calling FEMA. And then FEMA gets here and they don't know the area, they've never been to the area, and they want to give you rules that you've never heard about. They want to bring people that aren't as good as the people you already have. And FEMA's turned out to be a disaster. FEMA has been a very big disappointment. They cost a tremendous amount of money. It's very bureaucratic, and it's very slow. Other than that, we're very happy with them. Okay? And I think when there's a problem with the state, I think that problem should be taken care of by the state. That's what we have state.
President, you talked about conditions being placed on aid to California, voter ID and the like. Are there any conditions that you're going to put on aid to North Carolina?
We're going to do a lot for North Carolina. They've been very slow. I don't know why it's been so bad. This has been one of the worst I've seen. Well, in California, I have a condition. In California, we want them to have voter ID so the people have a voice, because right now the people don't have a voice because you don't know who's voting, and it's very corrupt. And we also want them to release the water. If they released the water, they wouldn't have had a problem. If they released the water when I told them to, because I told them to do it 7 years ago, if they would have done it, you wouldn't have had the problem that you had. You might not have even had a fire.
And honestly, I don't know what these people expected. North Carolina went to Donald Trump, and seeing as how this is how he's responding to this natural disaster, I don't think he's going to respond to the next series of floods with any better leadership. And I know everyone's tired of hearing about Project 2025, but it looks like this is another thing that Donald Trump is taking right out of the playbook. Chris Hayes had an excellent segment on this.
I want to note that the FEMA reform or privatization or abolition, like many of the things that have come up in the first week of the Trump administration, is echoed in Project 2025, which he said he'd never read and had nothing to do with. They talk about the opportunity to include privatizing FEMA, reforming it, or shift the majority of preparedness response costs to states and localities instead of the federal government, which, of course, is what he's talking about. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. It aligns there. One thing that's sort of, I don't want to get too in the weeds of some of his more absurd delusions, but my understanding of the condition of aid, as I heard it discussed by your colleagues who are Republicans, is that at least they were plausibly connecting it to some policy around how fires are dealt with. But today he says voter ID. Like, no, it has nothing to do with, oh, we're going to condition aid if you do this about like your land use. He wants voter ID for California because, as he told Dr. Phil, if Jesus counted the votes, he would have won California.
In Project 25, it literally says to eliminate FEMA and to essentially give those funds to the states. President Trump repeated that today. And so Project 2025 is here. And to think that we're going to implement, take away federal aid, move it to the states in times of major disasters is not acceptable. And I think Democrats in the House and Congress have been pretty clear. This is a non-starter. We will not support conditioning aid, certainly not to some bizarre way of treating fires, which is not really realistic, but obviously not to policy and to state law back in the state of California. And so, look, I hope the president has a good visit. I think the governor is doing a great job. We need our disaster aid, and we absolutely should not be eliminating FEMA for disasters across the country, which are likely to happen again in the future.
It shouldn't surprise anyone that Donald Trump doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. This idea of pushing FEMA back on the states or privatizing it would only lead to disasters that are disproportionately hurting Republican states. These Republican congressmen seem to forget that they're from the poorest states. So if the states are the ones responsible for taking care of their natural disasters, then they will be severely under-equipped to deal with their local disasters, while blue states like California and Illinois will have plenty of money to fight fires or de-ice roads because they're not having to foot the bill for these poor red states. And honestly, it's kind of hard to have empathy for these voters. It's a little hard not to say I told you so. Here's Michael Steele basically doing just that.
And here's a critical little piece that the president probably doesn't get because he don't read, is the fact that FEMA's job is why it was created on the heels of Katrina was the consolidation across agencies and across private agencies out there that are involved in the recovery and health and the administration of services to devastated areas to coordinate those efforts. And the monies that FEMA has allocated by the United States Congress is designed to put cash in hand immediately to get things moving so that you don't have the processes that slow down the recovery. Putting this exclusively in the hands of states, they will be overwhelmed by it. They cannot. First off,
states have their own FEMA already.
They have their own FEMA,
emergency
but they won't have the next level of cash that they're going to need to address that. So that's a part of it.
Which is why, in your words, FEMA was leveled up post-Katrina. It was originally created in 1979, and then in about 2003, it officially became a part of the Department of Homeland Security under there, and then it was leveled up, in the words of Michael Steele, post-Katrina. Why do we say all this? Because if Donald Trump wants to eliminate FEMA entirely, he's going to have to go to Congress to get Congress's approval for a reorganization, a presidential reorganization authority, and so he would have to seek this from both chambers. Both chambers would have to give it. I find it very hard to believe that places like North... Is Tom Tillis going to vote for this?
I don't know if Tom... Louisiana, North Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, all those states...
Florida?
Then we get into the tornado...
Tornado Alley.
Tornado Alley, those states, Ohio, Iowa, except... So y'all are prepared to have the federal government just go away in terms of its response and leave it to you? I just want to know how they're going to pay for it.
How are they going to pay for it? Well, you know what, Michael? You know what they say? This is what they voted for.
This is what they voted for.
This is what they voted for.
That's right. This is what they voted for, and the rest of us have to pay the price. If Trump gets what he wants in this case, you can absolutely see disaster relief improving in blue states and getting much, much worse in red ones. I can only hope that none of you are in these red states that are susceptible to natural disasters, and if you are, now might be a good idea to check out new areas. I'm Tony Hinderman with Really American, and I'll catch you next time.